I want you to go on a thought exercise with me about Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's missing mom. What if everything we assume to be true is wrong? What if the very premise that we've accepted as true, all of the details and the story and the narrative is not right? I believe there is a potential in this case that what's been going on is assumptive traps. This is where you make an assumption and it traps you into an idea and it doesn't let go, and it guides and sometimes misguides the entire investigation and, again, story around it. In this video, I'm going to get into 3 of those potential mistakes that I see and what it means for the case. This is Allegedly. So for a little context here, I want to share with you how an investigation works. There are always foundational assumptions. This means in a case, especially early on, when you have reports from family, friends, eyewitnesses, you begin to assume certain things as a baseline for your investigation. This happened there, this happened then, this is the sequence of communication, and you start baking in those beliefs into your assumptions. You start assuming those non-facts for the basis of analysis. But in an investigation, that's understood. You have leeway to do that because, of course, it can change. However, in a court of law, it's completely different. You will hear all the time, objection, assumes facts not in evidence. Why? Because if you can't prove it happened, if you can't prove the when and the how and the who and the why, you can't introduce it into evidence. So in cases like this where you have an investigation, early on there, I believe there has been some assumptions that we have to question, that we have to look at, because when you have this narrative that begins to get baked in, you start seeing the case through that lens. Everything comes from that belief system that has been instilled and installed into the case. And when that happens, that premise, you stop asking if something happened and you start asking, well, how does it fit? How does it fit with the timeline? How does it fit with the story? So let's dive into the first assumption of all of this, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to just kind of talk to you a little bit about Nancy Guthrie and the crime scene. I believe one assumption that we should be looking at and questioning in the narrative is that Nancy Guthrie returned home. Why do we know and believe that she returned home? Well, because the family that was the last ones to see her said, we had dinner, we had game night, someone took her home. There is the garage door that opens at a certain time, and then there is the blood trail. So let's take that piece by piece. We have to recognize that anybody who is telling a story, especially family members, who could always be looked at, even from the standpoint of we have to exclude you, we want to exclude you from the list of suspects. And of course, they've been very clear there is no suspect here. You have to always look at the people around the victim or the potential victim. Well, do they have a story or a reason that they may want to shape the story in one direction or not? So the fact that Nancy Guthrie was taken home is a story that was given by the family. Okay, fair enough. Take that for what it is. The next piece is, well, we saw the garage door go up. There is nothing concrete that says that Nancy Guthrie was anywhere near the garage door. It just means that someone with the code or who was able to make that garage door go up, it went up. So other than that, and then the blood. Well, as we do know, blood can be placed. It is very possible that blood can be transferred, dripped, dropped, placed there to create the idea that that person who was the recipient or who owned the blood was there. But again, these 3 pieces create the timeline that, yep, Nancy left one location and returned home. I say that it is quite possible that you have to look at all storylines here and all assumptions and say, we don't know that she returned. We don't know that she was the one at the garage door. It is possible that in a 42-minute gap from when the garage door went up until when her pacemaker disconnected, that something was happening. Was it being staged? We know that certain cameras were taken down. We know that there are things that happen, but we don't know who did it, who was present. And so there is always the potential, and I've seen others talk about this, that Nancy Guthrie never returned home. Yes, the pacemaker and her disconnected, but do we know for a fact, and perhaps authorities do, that her and the app and the pacemaker and the watch, that they were in the home when it disconnected? Once again, her items were left there, her phone and her watch, but it doesn't mean that she was ever there, that she ever returned. So again, it's questioning the narratives. It's looking at and saying, are we sure? Do we want to 100% say that that's what we believe happened? Assumption number 2, that there was a kidnapping at all. If you look at it, we have these unsubstantiated request or ransom notes, but very light on potential details. It seems as though it's not a very clear step 1, step 2, step 3, so that this kidnapper can get paid. So what we really have outside of this questionable ransom note is a almost perfect crime. Someone was able to take and remove this woman, and whatever state she is in now, there's no trace. As of this recording, we don't have a suspect, we don't have cameras, we don't have footage, we don't have anything. We don't have remains. So what it means is that someone was taken and potentially killed or is being held for ransom, but we don't actually know that. If there wasn't this idea of a ransom note, which came very late, much later than you would have in a case like this, where normally you'd want to get that ransom note in there. You'd also want to do it privately. You'd also want the family to turn up and say, where's mom? There's a note. First thing it says, do not contact authorities. Do not tell anyone. This is what we want you to pay. Here is a picture or something that shows that we have your mother. You're going to pay it. And whether they pay it or not, that would all be done behind closed doors. This is the exact opposite. This is all out in public with TMZ and news outlets. Very unusual, not well done, not well thought out. So you have this crime that's been committed in one way, shape, or form where they seemingly have gotten away with it. And now everything to do with the ransom and the actual kidnapping part and getting the money that made the risk of doing this all worthwhile, that's where they fall down. That's where they can't get their stuff together. So if there wasn't this potential for the ransom note, which seems to at this point have gone nowhere, what are we really left with? We're left with a woman that is missing, and we assume that it's a kidnapping. Just again, food for thought. Now, the third assumption with all of this is that the authorities are on top of it. You know, that we may not know all the details, but I'm sure they've done a really good job. I'm sure that they've crossed all their I's, dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's. We don't know that. There has been, and I've talked about this in another video, there has been a lot of missteps. And so there's this whole belief that, well, behind the scenes, they're probably, you know, playing 3D chess when it looks like they're playing checkers, not in such a great way. But we have to also assume that they're checking the septic tank immediately. They're looking at all of the grounds. As soon as that Nancy Guthrie's missing, they're combing in a grid-like fashion the backyard and looking at every potential hiding spot where they could hide a person or evidence or anything. Turns out Days later, somebody went, we should check the septic tank. Yeah, that big hole that anybody can just open up and put something in. They're in there with a stick trying to move around. Was that anything? Is that a body? Is that anything? Nope. They don't have any gloves on, which I thought was very interesting. Because if somebody opened that and put something in there, wouldn't their fingerprints potentially be on there? So shouldn't you also have gloves? So you have situations like that where they're missing things. They're having to come back and do like a redo on it. Oh, we might have missed that. So there's this assumption that they're on top of it, and that may not be true. So when you have all of these different pieces together, again, in an investigation, you have to look at all of the possibilities at all the time, which is why in any investigation, they look at who was the last person with them. They look at family and friends, people in an inner circle. Why? Because they have access. They have familiarity. It's not to say that, oh, they believe that this is who it is. No, they have to go through that. They have to go through that to not only make sure that they know that they've exhausted all options, but also when a person is also arrested and put on trial, that defense attorney is going to say, did you explore all opportunities, all options, or did you have tunnel vision on my client? Which is why they have to go through and look at all of the family members and friends and anyone in the inner circle. But again, it's really, really important to note that these are assumptions that she returned home, assumptions that she's been kidnapped, assumptions that she was the one putting in the garage door code, assumptions that she was there actively bleeding on the front steps, and that wasn't staged, or that someone didn't manufacture to make that look like she was there and she was present. So again, I wanted to bring all of this, just food for thought. It's a thought exercise. It's like any good investigator, you have to be fluid. You have to always question the premise, always question the direction, because with each little change, or each little idea or premise that you're accepting, it's moving you further in one direction. And all of a sudden you realize, well, how did we even get here? Oh, because of these 5 beliefs that we had before. But if any one of those is wrong or turns out to not be true, you could be way, way, way off. Or you could be close, but just slightly off enough that you miss something. So it's just something that I wanted to bring up. Food for thought. Again, this is breaking news. This is a breaking story. So new information is coming up all the time. And so we just don't know, but this is where we are, the latest. These are my thoughts. Also, remember, as I always say,
We'll jump right back to the story, but a quick
not
note.
that part. As I always say, true crime can happen in an instant. You don't want to be the next true crime story. You don't want to be a victim of anything, which is why I have a Protect Yourself toolkit. You can look below this video. You can scan the QR code, and it is things that you can do to protect yourself physically as well as yourself online, because there are criminals everywhere. So again, grab the Protect Yourself toolkit. It's 100% free. All of that information, all of the links to some of my favorite tools that you can use. So again, this is Allegedly. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you on another video.